We are excited to share that we made a budget-friendly cell camera. A lot of people have requested this over the years, and you get to hear a sneak peek of behind the scenes of how this camera was developed and why we're so excited for it. I hope you guys check out the Exodus Rival on our website and learn more here right now. So what birthed this project or product originally?
Some of it was consumer feedback. Some of it's shift in the marketplace, right? But I think the idea of having a simplistic, reliable cell camera that is also feature rich and easy to use was kind of the idea behind the product. And to do that, you mentioned the Lift 2 and the Trek. To make a simplistic camera, we've kind of followed that same model of looking at a previous camera that we built in the Exodus Render, and then noted like what was absolutely not necessary in that product. Now that product has a lot of bells and whistles and fancy stuff in it. So to get our manufacturing costs down, to lower the MSRP, we just took out things that were not absolutely necessary. Things like the LCD screen, the navigation keys, like the little keypad, some of the tooling costs. So all of that led us to eliminate some redundant hardware. Things like, if you limit your circuitry, you can limit capacitors and, the technical nuances of the components and PCB boards. So all of that really allowed us to get the manufacturing cost down. And as like you said, in the D2C model, being consumer direct, like we just have that one markup. That's it. So if we have a product that retails for $200, we have $100 in it. Like we're probably more transparent than we should be when we, are talking about some of this stuff, but that's just the way that we've kind of operated our business for the last 8 years. Like if we can't talk about it to the general public, then we're probably doing something a little bit wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this typically in the past, when we've released some other cameras, there was more buildup, more lead time to it. And so this one is pretty streamlined. So what was the testing process for the Exodus Rival?
It was, to be honest, it was a little bit frustrating because it got us outside of our comfort zone. And we'll get into some of the specifics of the camera, but I mentioned that there's no LCD screen. Just about every product that we've built has either had a backlit LED with some type of, text prompt or an LCD screen. So when you're testing things, the camera might report some type of error where you can physically see it on camera. This camera is a little bit different where there's only LED indicators. So on the development side, when we first got into this, on my end, it was like, it was just outside of the box. It got me outside of my comfort zone, which is good for growth, right? That's the only way you can grow is being outside your comfort zone. But I think a couple of things that we utilized, again, going back to that model of taking a previous built camera and kind of stripping it down to the necessities to make it simplistic and yet reliable. We looked at, the one single most expensive piece of hardware, which is the cellular module, right? So what we used in the render is still class leading, 3 years later. Like that hardware in that camera is still capable of doing things that people are just now releasing cameras on. So we looked at that and said, okay, what can get us a more cost-effective module that still offers quality features? So we looked at an EC21 module variant versus what was used in the render. So that saves some costs there. We were able to lower the overall development costs on tooling by using some open sourced housing or open source tooling on a couple of the pieces. Visually the camera, you see it looks a little bit different than our past cameras. So everything that we're doing in 2023 has updated housing designs. And I think, looking at the fact that this camera has a different flash range or a different flash type. So this is an 850 flash unit, which is considered like a low glow. That allowed us to also look at different components on the image sensor side too, because you're not captive to using a certain piece of hardware at night to produce X or Y photos. And when you get into black flash stuff, it's a little more difficult because you're just not emitting a whole lot of light there at night.
Yeah. And for anyone that's thinking, well, I'm only no glow, period. I had this camera. I ran these cameras all fall. In one particular camera, I had more deer bed in front of it than any other camera in the past at night, just hanging out right in front of it. And so that's something that I've only ran black flash cameras here for the last 6 years. So that was something that was really apparent to or paying a lot of attention to. And I really didn't see any potential drawbacks on that. But back to running these cameras this past fall, extremely reliable, very great photos, impressive battery life. And obviously it's not as feature rich as the render, but for someone on a budget wanting to increase the number of cell cameras they have in the field, the Rival easily tackles that job without any question or shout of a doubt. So to me, that was the problem that a lot of consumers were sharing with us, like, hey, we need a more cost-effective camera. And this is our answer for that. And I think if you get one of these in your hands, you'll see some of the same things that I shared right now. But this camera is obviously looks a lot less complicated than previous models. But I know you touched on it a little bit, but what was What was the purpose of that essentially?
It was just keeping that simplistic mindset and still making it effective. I mean, when you start looking at IoT solutions or connected devices, like the bigger part of the user experience is within the app there. So it's like, why are we putting this stuff if on the camera, if people are using their phones to get these things set up? So that was where it made probably more sense to take out that LCD screen, go to those indicators, go to a single switch, and then run all of those settings and features through the app. But the key there is that there's still embedded settings, default settings, like on the camera, which I think is relatively important because you can just turn it on and walk away from it and let it work. And then also you can, if you wanted to use this thing as a regular standard SD card camera, there's potential to do that there too.